Have you taken a recent glance at the prices of luxury watch brands? Surprise, surprise, Omega has followed in the footsteps of Rolex. Whether you're a seasoned watch collector or a fair-weather buff, one thing you've most likely noticed is that at the dawn of a new year, luxury watch brands tend to review their prices, and most times going northwards. In today's video, we'll be carefully dissecting everything there is to know about Omega's price increments and just how it may affect your plans moving forward. Before we get into the topic of content though, let's take a quick look at what happened in Rolex. Once again, on the 1st of January, Rolex officially hiked the prices of their models, much to the chagrin of the lovers of the brand. As things stand across the sensational lineup of the brand, in the United States of America, the average standpoint shut just above 3%. However, price hikes hit certain models harder than others. If you were one of the people hoping to get a white gold Daytona, we wish you the best of fortunes, as its 17% upsurge would certainly cost you even more. As for its well-known sibling, the steel Daytona, it now costs around $14,800. Marking a rise of almost 2%, a jump of $250. Moving on to some of Rolex's most coveted steel sports models, the Submariner with the reference 126610 is now over $10,000. Its rise was around 1.6% and in monetary terms, around $150. While the price increments will undoubtedly be frustrating to fans and collectors alike, or at least the majority of whom have already had their tongues drooling in anticipation of a call from their various authorized dealers, should we be surprised? During the dreadful global pandemic, Rolex completely froze its prices for 2 years. Not even a single penny went up. Now, if you aren't too familiar with the protocols of the Swiss luxury watchmaker, in the simplest of terms, that's a complete anomaly. For example, let's take a look at the United Kingdom. After Brexit, the British pound crashed against the euro, and at that time, Rolex, just like most watch companies, was particularly slow to adjust their pricing. Due to that, the United Kingdom became one of the cheapest places to buy luxury watches in the world, albeit briefly. In light of the price hikes, did you know that inflation in the United States of America averaged around 8% through November? With that in mind, Rolex increments were purely logical. So, what's happening to Omega? Just recently, the luxury watch brand announced that there would be an increase in the range of their collections, with the focus being on currency discrepancies. However, according to Fratello Watches, in some regions abroad, the price increments only affect the Speedmaster Professional and the Seamaster Professional 300. According to investment bank Jefferies, the luxury watch conglomerate Swatch Group AG raised prices across a slew of its brands, increasing the cost of the flagship Omega Speedmaster by about 7% across Europe and the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, the price of an Omega Speedmaster automatic watch with a moon phase complication is now around $13,600, marking a 7.1% increase compared to last year. How about some other places in Europe? For the same model, the price rose to an average of 6.8% in Italy. Not even the continent of Australia was left unscathed. Ideally, they're probably even one of the most affected. There, the average price hike of Omega watches goes way up, to the tune of 6 to 8%. It's more than significant. However, in the United States of America, the same model had an increase of only around 2%. Now, while the currency discrepancies may seem a bit odd, the truth of the matter is that the value of currencies tends to constantly go up and down. The luxury conglomerate may have locked in the rates at a certain period last year and then made adjustments in line with their documentation. Looking at things from a collective perspective though, would an increase of around $400 or $500 make a difference to luxury watch consumers? It's really hard to say, but 2 years ago the current Speedmaster Professional in steel with Hazellite crystal and steel case back had an asking price of $6,500. In the premier months of last year, it shot up to just around $7,200 and in September it went to a further $7,600. In today's market though, the same timepiece would fetch you an excess of $8,000. Let's look at some others. The Omega Seamaster Diver 300M blue on bracelet timepiece once sold for around $5,400, but in today's market you'd have to splash $200 extra. With a similar increase, albeit costlier, the Omega Seamaster 300 once sold for $6,500 USD, but now it's around $6,700 USD. The Constellation Globe Master's old price was around $6,900 USD, but in today's market it's up to $7,100. With that in mind, have you wondered why the luxury watch market is currently skyrocketing in prices across so many brands? Let's take a look at Swatch brands. Excluding Omega, brands like Tissot and Longines have recently made similar moves to Rolex's price boosts across the United Kingdom, Japan, and South Korea more than other locations. The reason was apparently to offset weaker currencies and prevent price discrepancies. In autumn, Rolex raised their prices, countering rising costs and currency fluctuations caused by a strong American dollar and Swiss francs against a weaker euro and British sterling. Last year, a couple of Asian nations like South Korea and Japan had a bad time out. As a matter of fact, what's a better way to buttress the point than referring to the Moon Swatch? Guys, did you know this budget-friendly bioplastic swatch version of the Omega Speedmaster rose by over 7% in the aforementioned Eastern nations? Here's the shocking part. Swatch Group sold around 1 million Moon Swatches last year alone and didn't even increase prices across Europe, America, and the United Kingdom. Let's look at another example. The Omega Speedmaster 300 dive watch hiked by at least 6.5% in Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom, a far cry from modest increments in America. However, one thing you have to consider is that price increments are far from being a modern phenomenon. If you study the prices of watches in virtually every luxury brand out there, you will find out it keeps changing almost every year. And here's another fact. 12 months from now, is there anything stopping the price of luxury watches from going up some more? Look around, everything's coming up, starting from transport down to energy, and even electricity went up. With that in mind, the cost of living in virtually every part of the globe is getting more costly. In 2022 alone, we saw widespread inflation, and the scary part is that there's no way to predict or determine when things will finally return to normal. Now, while this may lead to a great number of people to be more prudent with their finances by cutting costs on the things that they find as want, with an example being expensive trinkets meant for luxury, would such a scenario happen? Guys, the demand for luxury watches is still as high as ever and arguably even greater. If you head out to any boutique that sells luxury items like Gucci, Hermes, or even Chanel, you'd be hard-pressed to find the place empty. Regardless of how expensive things are at the moment, people are still spending like it's 99. But would price increments be a constant phenomenon though? While this is purely speculative, as long as the demand for luxury watches keeps soaring northwards, it is really difficult to think otherwise. Sometime in the future, things may slow down and increments would become unnoticeable. However, don't take this to mean things will start to recede in the future. In the world of expensive luxury, one should never expect price decrements. It's kind of against its entire nature. With that in mind, what kind of prospective buyers would be the most affected? Well, by common logic, the kind of buyers who would be affected by the surge in prices are those who save up their money to add a desired luxury timepiece to their collections. For this particular category of buyers, surges would make their quests even more difficult, and it's safe to say they're most likely going to be the first to change their minds. Apart from the brands we talked about in today's video, a couple of others would have their annual price reviews and, like Omega, follow suit to Rolex. However, some may take a bit longer to do so. But one thing is for sure, luxury watchmakers are far from being bothered about the possibility of losing some customers due to the ever-increasing costs. Speaking to Bloomberg News, Swatch's chief executive Nick Heuer stated the company would hit record sales of as much as $9.8 billion in 2023. Also last year, Swiss watch exports hit a record of $27 billion in 2022, a sharp rise of around 11.8% from the year before that.